Hi everyone, another fantastic interview ahead of us. It's been a great week so far with some fascinating talks, and I'm thrilled to say I have Siobhan Dee here with me today. For anyone who's not familiar with Siobhan, Siobhan is a health coach, also a nurse who has a passion for diabetes. So Siobhan, welcome. And
thank you so much, Catherine. Thanks for having me. Lovely to be
it's a
here.
pleasure. And
congratulations on your amazing event. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great week so far. So yeah, and more to come. So Siobhan, would you just tell us, for people who maybe aren't familiar with your work, just briefly, what you do and what your work entails?
Sure. So briefly, like you said, I qualified as a nurse in Cork University Hospital a long time ago, back in the 80s. And I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for quite a while too, Catherine, on a lot of drugs actually for type 2 diabetes and many other diseases. Now, I always had an interest in diabetes because my sister was diagnosed with type 1 actually when I was 14. She was just 11.
Oh, wow.
So, and back then it was very different, I mean, it really was, I guess, almost more serious, if you like, than now, because the science wasn't great back then. Mm-hmm. But so therefore, I guess she spent more time in hospital than you'd like at that age, and I was there with her all the time. So diabetes has really been part of my life since I've been 14, and no doubt really prompted my whole interest in this. When I was a nurse, there was no such thing, as type 2 in hospitals. You never saw people with type 2, perhaps somebody really elderly. But it's just incredible how between then in the last 30 years it has exploded, and now is one of the fastest growing diseases in the world. So I guess it was really in the pharma industry that my light bulb moment came when one day I had a group of specialists in the room, mostly nurse specialists for diabetes. We were launching a new drug that had some pretty unpleasant side effects, and I was suggesting, why don't we do a lifestyle program alongside this to help people have a lower dose than necessary and therefore minimize possible side effects, etc. And there wasn't great enthusiasm, is the truth, in the room. And people were saying, no, people just want the drugs. And at this stage, and this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, there was so much science starting to appear on the possibility of diabetes reversal, which, before then, a doctor would say, hand on heart, and be very, and totally honestly, I guess, that this is a chronic lifelong condition and we need to manage this for the rest of your life. And suddenly, we're seeing these studies that are showing people are reversing their diabetes, quitting their medication. Now, I'm not saying everyone can do that or should do that, but what I really feel strongly about is that everyone should understand, first of all, what causes type 2 diabetes, because it is a lifestyle disease. Yeah. 99.9% of people, there are these, if you get damage to your pancreas, for instance, in a traffic accident, you could get type 2 diabetes, but otherwise, pretty much everyone, it is lifestyle. But there's so many things that feed into it. And for me, I feel everyone deserves and should know all of this information and then know what they can do to manage their own disease with or without medication. If you go on medication, the same medication isn't going to last you for the rest of your life. If you are diabetic for the rest of your life, you're going to have to keep topping it up because they lose their efficacy for lots of reasons. So even if it's a case that you take less or that you suffer less side effects or less complications, I want everyone to know all of this information. So I guess that day when I got that reception from the group in the room, I thought, well, I know people do want this and I was right. Yeah. And that's what I do. So now I really focus on high risk groups. There are some people, and particularly people in specific jobs like drivers, for instance, have 3 times the risk of type 2 diabetes than physiotherapists. Okay, so there is some groups who are at a limited risk and some groups who are very prone, and there's lots of reasons for that. So I now work with those groups and help them ideally to become resilient to diabetes so that they don't get a diagnosis, but if they do have it, that at least we have them in best shape we can.
And I guess the interest this week with us talking is that, you know, there is research out there that diabetes may lead to neurological conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia, or that may increase your risk of such conditions. So I guess from my perspective, it's trying to share as much knowledge as we can during the week so that people understand, you know, how to best look after their health and how to prevent the likes of type 2 diabetes. And Siobhan, when you say there about the truck drivers, I'm presuming it probably the same. Is that because of its shift work? But, you know, does that put it at a higher risk if you're a shift worker?
Yeah. Well, the truth is there aren't any studies that really, you know, singularly identify all of the reasons. But what I say to them, to people who do shift work, it's a high stress job. I mean, okay, if you're driving along the Dingle Peninsula, maybe on a day like today, there's not so much stress. But most people who are, you know, driving in cities, they're on timetables, they're on deadlines, they're dealing with the public. And let's face it, generally jobs where people have to deal with the public, they do claim higher levels of stress. Definitely, like you said, shift work has a lot to do with it. Stress really puts your blood sugars up. Sleep, therefore, if you're on shift work, your sleep isn't so good. So, of course, sleep has a big impact on how you metabolize sugar and how your insulin serves you, if you like. So, yeah, and on top of that, of course, a lot of them are grabbing food, you know, on the go, because they don't have that 9 to 5, 1 hour during the day where they can perhaps bring their own lunch. You know, they don't open the fridge on a bus, for instance, or whatever. So it's all of those things combined that feed into it. It's like the perfect storm, in truth, for most people.
Right. Okay. And is it when it comes to what's the difference between type 1 and type 2? I guess is one thing.
Yeah. So very briefly, type 1, you'll often hear it referred to as juvenile diabetes, and it tends to be mostly diagnosed in younger children. Like I mentioned, my sister, she was 11. So tends to be mostly diagnosed in under 15s, but that is starting to change. Interestingly, it is growing in adults now in terms of diagnosis.
Right.
But type 1 is an autoimmune disease. It is not a lifestyle disease. And once you have your diagnosis, then the lifestyle factors are hugely important, because it's, you know, regardless of type 1 or type 2, you have to watch your blood sugars. But type 1, like I said, is what's called an autoimmune disease. Type 2, on the other hand, with type 1, you are prescribed insulin from the beginning. Your insulin receptors, your insulin cells are pretty much not working. You don't have insulin from the beginning. With type 2, it takes 5 to 7 years in an average person to actually, you know, first a really slow, gradual onset. It's this insidious sort of disease in the background. So you don't wake up someday and go, God, I feel rotten, I'm going to the doctor. You know, if you have type 1, you are in emergency room. You don't even go to the doctor. You know, you feel so bad. And you're possibly drowsy, etc. But in type 2, it tends to be picked up often in just a routine exam. So it's often a shock diagnosis for people. But the really sad thing is that while this is happening in the background and blood sugars are creeping up slowly, it is doing a lot of damage. And like you said, there's a huge involvement in brain health also. And, you know, Alzheimer's disease is often referred to as type 3 diabetes. And there's lots of evidence now to support that that is the case, because we have insulin receptors in our hypothalamus in our brain, which is our memory and emotion center, if you like. So unfortunately, there is damage being done. So for instance, most people, when they're diagnosed with type 2, will have damage to the backs of their eyes because those tiny blood vessels are already damaged. So their vision is somewhat compromised. The same happens in the brain, because we have these tiny, delicate blood vessels in our brain too. And, you know, just think about, you have sugary blood, which is sticky blood, and these tiny little delicate vessels are so easily damaged. So, and just a point of interest is that when we're have normal blood sugar, if you like, and in a normal state, what our body wants is to have just 1 teaspoon of sugar in our whole body.
Wow, one.
Oh,
God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, you know, you people say, oh, you need sugar for your brain.
Wow.
Well, actually, You don't. And
One
you're,
teaspoon. Oh my
yeah.
God, Siobhan.
But we
Oh,
store the excess in our liver. So
yeah.
our liver, as we need it, our liver will push it out into our body and of course into our brain. Our brain needs, of course, lots of energy to operate efficiently. But yeah, that's an
And,
interesting.
and and so when it comes to type 2, you mentioned there that it's when someone goes for an exam that it might come up. I'm presuming that's when bloods are done and it comes up in terms of glucose levels, and maybe if they're
Absolutely.
drinking a lot and some other symptoms, it would come
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah. The
Okay.
truth is that most people, I mean, most doctors now will suggest doing it, or, if they're doing uh, lots of bloods, they will check it if somebody is overweight,
Okay.
if they are complaining about being thirsty a lot,
Yeah.
and that sends them to the bathroom a lot, of course. And in men, actually, erectile dysfunction. So often somebody will
Right.
go and say, I need Viagra,
Okay.
because they're having difficulties. But actually, it's diabetes tends to be the cause of that for a huge amount of men.
Okay.
So that would be a typical, and like I mentioned earlier, blurred vision. So often you get these floaters in your eyes. Now,
Oh
I don't
yeah.
want everyone that gets floaters to go running and thinking they have diabetes, because obviously lots of things feed into that. But if you are noticing that you are getting blurred vision and you have other risk factors, then it's certainly something to consider.
Right.
So I guess risk factors would be most people, but only 80% of people are overweight. So 20% of people with type 2 diabetes are normal weight. And indeed, that would be Alzheimer's, I'm sure, also. And it tends to be people who eat a very high carbohydrate diet, a lot of processed foods, have a sedentary lifestyle. And for me, and I know you had a fantastic session talking about exercise. But it's not, and it's not just about exercise. And I know this was referenced too. It's about movement throughout the day. So some people will go to the gym, do their thing in the morning, and that's great. And then they sit all day long, and they come home and they sit on the couch in the evening. They're wrecked. And of course, we all love to graze. I mean, there's nothing nicer than sitting in front of the TV after a long day and grazing.
Yeah.
But it is the worst thing we can do for our health, in truth. So
And I
if
guess,
you have all of these criteria. And one other thing, just can I quickly mention, because this comes up all the time, about genes. So people will say, so for instance, if both of your parents, if one of your parents, you're at a higher risk. If both of your parents, you're at, sort of twice the risk of getting diabetes. If your whole family have it, yes, you're at a higher risk, and yes, you probably are genetically predisposed, but it does not mean that you will get the diagnosis. So if you start leading an anti-diabetes lifestyle, you can prevent that gene from being expressed. So in other words, you can turn it off. So you don't have to get it. It's never inevitable. But you could be higher risk.
And I think the same actually goes when it comes to Alzheimer's. If you have, well, it depends which parent has had Alzheimer's, but it's not a given that you'll get Alzheimer's because a parent has one. But it does make you predisposed. So I guess when the first thing is, if someone has concerns, I would always say to people anyway, when you kind of reach in your late 30s, your early 40s, you should be having routine check with your GP at least once a year, having your bloods checked and so forth. So, obviously you'd have some indication from a check with your doctor, regarding your BMI, your weight, your bloods, etc. And Siobhan, then I guess two probably really big things. What can you do to prevent it? Let's talk about that first, because I guess if you have type 2 diabetes, that's a different journey. So what really, I guess, the important thing probably that we want to talk about is, what do you need to be aware of? What should you be doing today that can help prevent it?
Okay, great question. I totally concur with you on people getting their bloods done, by the way. And one thing that I do actually, some people just are terrified to go to their doctor. particularly, I mentioned drivers a while ago because they're a group I'm doing a lot of work with at the moment, and people are terrified that their license is going to be revoked if it's discovered that they have damage to their eyes, etc. So what I do suggest, definitely number one is go to your doctor, but there are home test kits now. If you go online, there's an Irish company called Let's Get Checked, where you can actually check your own HbA1c, which is, a really good place to start for checking your blood sugar. And you will get a call. You will be told if it's out of range. So even if you feel you need to know that before you go to your doctor, then, it's not a bad idea to go to do that. I think it's about €40, €45. And there's a number of companies that do it, and they're they use good laboratories and they are accurate. So anyhow, just to mention that in case people, for whatever reason, are nervous.
That's a very valid. There's so many people who really don't put off going to the doctor. So
absolutely,
it's something that definitely needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I should say, if you do get an out of range result, you need to go and get that checked. I mean, I would always double check anything that's out of range. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So to answer your question about prevention, I mentioned a plethora of things a while ago. But one thing, so I did talk about stress, and I'm sure if people listen back to all of the videos here, you have touched on that. And but just for people to really appreciate that stress, your stress hormone is cortisol and adrenaline. Indeed, we're all familiar with adrenaline. Cortisol, a lot of people less so, and that can push up your blood sugar. Okay, so it's your body's response to a stressful event. So let's say if you have to run really fast from something, etc., etc. Exactly. Yes. So it does go back to that fight or flight. Yeah. So effectively, what it does is your body thinks, "Oh, I need loads of energy. Push the sugar out." So sugar is fantastic when you need it. So that's what happens is your liver pushes sugar into your bloodstream, and you have the energy to do what it is you need to do, or have this extra strength, etc. But if you're sitting in your car going to work and you're late, or if you're doing, you're sharing an office with somebody that is driving you crazy, or getting too close, talking about COVID and social distancing or whatever. We all have, so some people have these stressors all day long because they wake up before their feet hit the floor, they're thinking about what they have to do today, and they're stressed.
Or the phone is on, that's exactly. A big one.
Completely. So if you are identifying with this, really, diabetes or not, I would just urge you to, you cannot underestimate the impact that this has on your health.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Siobhan, on every single interview I've done this week, every single one, stress it comes up everywhere. Yeah, absolutely.
But it is I remember when I was a nurse, and people would get heart attacks, and doctors would just write stress-induced heart attack, and we kind of just took it as, oh, okay, nothing you can do about that. But we know now that there is so much you can do, and even that simple thing of taking 10 minutes out twice a day and sitting down, finding what helps you to deal with your stress is probably the greatest gift you can give yourself. Because I think, and I just see it even with my clients, it's very hard to change habits and change behaviors, change your eating, push yourself out for exercise, etc. if you're really, really stressed. It takes over. So start there, even with the small, simple things. You mentioned shift work earlier and sleep. If you have that luxury of having a regular lifestyle, do your best to get to sleep at the same time every night, even at weekends, and get up in the morning at the same time. And that will pay dividends. Believe it or not, your fat storage is really heavily influenced by your sleep.
Yeah. And so, I've often read that about how you lose weight when you're sleeping, basically.
Absolutely. Ghrelin is that hormone that, and you want it to be operating at, at optimum, if you like. So you are at greater risk of putting up weight or storing more fat if you're not sleeping properly. So sleep does underpin our health, as they say. It's so true. Exercise and movement. So, like I said, it's not about just that one burst in the morning, although it is clearly important. It's getting up as many times as you can in the day. I say to people, you know, if you work in an office, and I can understand you sit down, you're working, we all do it, you know, drink lots of water. You have to go to the loo. Just have a big, huge liter of water, keep drinking it, even if it's that. And when you get up, you know, do your best to move yourself around as much as you can. Movement is hugely important, just every bit as much as that piece of exercise. And then, of course, the big one is the last one, and that's nutrition. And there are so many people out there with so many opposing pieces of advice on diabetes and nutrition. You know, you have to be vegan, you have to be vegetarian, you know, high fat, low carb, keto. So I can understand why people are so confused. And the truth is, all of them work, but it's finding what works for you the best. There are some commonalities among all of these, and that is, first of all, there's no question carbohydrates have the biggest impact on your blood sugar, okay? So carbohydrates are foods like bread, pasta, rice, anything that has white flour in it. Generally, you'll find a white flour, once you eat white flour, it's, you know, so it's a cookie, it's a piece of cake, it's a piece of bread, whatever it is, and it tastes great in your mouth. Once it leaves your mouth, your body goes sugar, it, you know, it turns into sugar, and that's how it deals with it, if you like. So understanding that all of that pushes your blood sugar up is really important. Now, so if you're avoiding diabetes and you have an otherwise healthy lifestyle, I generally say to people, you know, your carbohydrate is no more than quarter your plate. Okay, so when you're having your dinner, for instance, if you're having pasta or rice, ideally it's brown. Okay, just do your best to cut the white stuff out, because it's in lots of things that you don't even know it's in anyhow. You are getting, believe it or not, plenty of it. So a quarter of your plate carbohydrate, a half is vegetable, and then a quarter some kind of protein, you know, with healthy fat. So personally, I am a huge fan of keeping carbohydrates to that lower limit of, you know, no more than a quarter, and really going heavy on vegetables and healthy fats. So, and then, you know, with or without, if you eat meat or not, or fish or not, is up to you, but just to make sure, otherwise, you know, that you're getting plenty of beans and lentils and legumes, but then also be mindful that they have quite a high carbohydrate content also. So for instance, if you are somebody who knows you're at risk of Alzheimer's or diabetes, you know, or anything that's blood sugar related, then just be mindful of that and understand that carbohydrates do affect your blood sugar, and you know, you need to understand, to know that you are metabolizing it well and that it is working for you. I can't, you know, the whole vegetable thing, I could talk all day about. I feel so strongly about it.
I think that's a lovely guideline though, Siobhan, because it's very easy in your head to kind of think, okay, I have a quarter carb, quarter protein, a half vegetable. And without a shadow of a doubt, I mean, later on today, I'm talking to a nutritionist, but across the board, again, like stress, food is key when it comes to your brain health. And as part of that food, it is partly the healthy fats for the omegas and so forth and fish, but fruit and vegetables, fiber are the cornerstone. They are the cornerstone.
They are where it's at. And actually, just to mention, because for brain health particularly, I remember seeing one study that was looking at type 3 diabetes and Alzheimer's, and they tested 2 different compounds. One was resveratrol, which is in berries. So blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, etc. Berries, I mean, and you mentioned fiber. Berries are full of fiber. They're the lowest sugar fruit. They have so much goodness in them. I mean, it's not just that compound. They're, you know, it's so good for your heart, your blood sugar, your brain, everything. So really feel passionate about this. I try to tell people, just eat as many berries as you can,
and
you know,
particularly
as often as you can.
when they're in season, right? So now at the moment, you know, I've tried to really do that with the kids, because God, now we love our blueberries. So to be honest, we do probably have them year round.
We do too. We do
But
too.
other than that, I do try and stick to the seasonal. But I mean, like, my sister lives out in the country, and she has a lane nearby where, you know, come, I think probably July and August, so much, we literally, you'd be filling buckets down there of blackberries, and oh God, it's like your childhood. It's just,
honestly,
you know,
totally.
berries.
Totally.
Berries.
Yeah. Turmeric actually is the other compound that they looked at in that study, and that also curcumin, had a really positive effect on helping to stabilize blood sugar and to slow the effects on the brain. So
turmeric's an all-round good one.
Honestly, again, it's fantastic for everything.
I'd use a lot of the fresh root in cooking. I think it's lovely. You just have to be careful with your hand.
Yellow.
Go quite, the color. And can I just ask, what are your thoughts on nuts and seeds?
Oh, I'm a huge fan of nuts and seeds.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to check I wasn't, because I'm addicted to nuts.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of them. From a diabetes perspective, probably the two that are best researched would be almonds and walnuts.
Right.
And there are studies there to show walnuts in particular, you know, a handful of walnuts every day, the value of that. Walnuts actually have omega-3 fats, but also lots and lots of nutrition and lots of phytochemicals and all those good things. You can't, for me, you can't undervalue nuts in the whole diet. And for stroke in particular, actually, which is, we're talking about diabetes, and I don't want to frighten people. I did mention damage to your eyes, but also in terms of complications, not only are we talking about Alzheimer's, but heart attack, stroke, fatty liver disease, kidney disease, you know, the list is endless, unfortunately. Erectile dysfunction I mentioned. So, you know, it's pretty catastrophic to get that diagnosis and to not do something about it. You know? If you are there thinking that is me, or I already was told I'm at risk, or I'm pre-diabetic, and this is something else just to briefly mention, there is this little gap between normal blood sugar and that diagnosis. Where you're sort of in limbo, and you know, doctors often say, "Oh, you'll definitely get it. Come back to me next year." Which, in truth, some of them aren't. A lot of them, in fairness, now do realise that you can send it back into normal range. But if you have been told that, you know, that's the best time to reverse it and to stop it. So, so I don't want it to be a negative message. You know, there is so much that you can do. For yourself. So we mentioned, the food thing, yes, fats, I would certainly favor. I think the studies that are coming out now, and they are coming thick and fast, for the people who are having the high fat, low carb approach. And it doesn't have to be lifelong. So, and you don't have to go into ketosis. That's a whole other conversation. But if you really reduce your carbs and you eat decent, and I'm talking about healthy fats, like you mentioned nuts, you mentioned oily fish, olive oil, you know, and like simple things like having, you know, taking out a bag of baby spinach leaves, and, you know, if you're really in a hurry, because of course we're all in a hurry all the time when it comes to eating. But if you get a bag of spinach leaves, avocado, some nuts, chop up a pepper, a few spring onions, you know, things that you can grab really quickly and easy, an egg, olive oil over it, it'll fill you up. And this is the thing, is that you need to be full, because people get to go away and lose weight, which is so unfair, because if that was easy, there'd be nobody overweight in the world, you know? So, so for me, it's about filling up and then trying to not eat between meals. That's the other one I mentioned earlier about the evening time. Even if you can cut that out, and also for if you can have your evening meal as early as you can, you know, given your personal circumstances, and then have your breakfast as late as you can. Okay. It puts that, you know, it increases your fasting period. So we hear a lot about fasting now, and people think, oh, it means I can't eat.
Intermittent fasting. That's it.
But that's just, you know, you can easily create a 12-hour gap between dinner and breakfast. Doing that one thing alone could make a big difference.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that, Siobhan. I'd often talk about that when I do my talks, in terms of it's not, I wouldn't be a purist intermittent fasting fan by any means, but what I do like is giving the body the fasting at night. So say, if, for example, if you have your last meal at 7, if you can try and go at least to 7 the next morning, and anything after that is an extra benefit to your body. Yeah. Just one thing I just wanted to mention. We talked about nuts and seeds. One thing that I find, and I know this because I visited one of the factories that kind of store and look after nuts and seeds, is a lot of people don't realize they should be stored in the fridge. And the value, particularly the omega-3, the nutritional value goes down if they're kind of left out in the counter, they're exposed, their package isn't sealed, etc., etc. So I'm always kind of saying that to people, make sure, particularly your walnuts and your almonds, that you keep them in the fridge, because it
can go rancid.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess just on the nuts thing also, peanuts are probably the one nut that you have to be extra cautious with, because they are prone to being moldy, actually, and you don't notice it, when you see it. But they're of all the nuts, they are probably the least, the last one I would suggest, unless you know that they're organic. And and again, knowing where your food comes from, for me, is so important. Because where your food is grown is, has an impact on the quality of it. And even simple things like I mentioned vegetables, and trying to have a really good variety of vegetables, and trying to get into this idea. I get people to count the colors on your plate. Okay, so as many colors as you can have. So a red pepper, a green broccoli, white cauliflower, aubergine, courgette, whatever, but just knowing the colors. And when you're even doing your shopping, look in your basket and see, do I have a good variety of color here? Because every color gives you different nutrients. So it's not just eat your veg. And lots of people have the peas and the carrots every day, and because that's easy and it's habit.
Eat the rainbow. Eat the rainbow is what I always say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a nice tip for kids too, in terms of, just look at your plate, what colors have you on it? That kind of thing would involve them a little bit more in making sure they've got a nice variety of colors.
Absolutely. And it's also so good for your gut health. And I guess that's the other thing to mention also. You can eat all of the right foods, but if you're not absorbing the value of those nutrients, if you're not absorbing properly, then that can, I guess, negate some of the benefits. So it's just to understand the value of gut health. And also to understand that we all, our microbiome, which is our healthy gut bacteria, we all have a different, it's like our thumbprint, if you like. Everyone's is different. And that's part of the reason why we need to eat such a varied diet, because this is the future of medicine, where we all know what our microbiome needs, but we are carrying around these little armies with us, and we need to feed them. So it's making sure that we're doing that. We have lots of colonies of these bacteria. It's not just one army down in your gut. We have lots of them, so we have to look after them, and that's the other important reason why we need to have a really varied diet. I'm a huge fan of gut health as well, and obviously I do the milk kefir, the fermented foods, all of that, which is brilliant. And it's like that, it's the diversity through your food gives you the diversity in your gut, so the good bacteria, you're flourishing it more, etc. I guess I've very much come, I think you need so much good bacteria that you have to make sure your diet is varied enough that you're getting the prebiotics and probiotics and all the sources. But that's another bigger conversation. It is, for sure. But just to one quick thing to slip in, which is we're all, immune health now is so important. So what you and I are talking about here, the stress, the sleep, the nutrients, the dense food, the having a healthy gut, this is all immune boosting. So in these era of COVID, etc., where we're all spending, a fortune on, lots of supplements or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Start with your food and
Yeah, big
everything
time.
else, lifestyle, and that's where your immune health really works well in your favor.
Food first. Food first for sure. Any last minute tips or anything you'd like to say, Siobhan, before we wrap up?
Oh, well, you mentioned a minute ago one question which we didn't get to, which is what do you do if you have the diagnosis?
Oh yeah, sorry.
So
yeah.
I think, or the pre-diabetes. And in truth, everything we've talked about, Catherine, is relevant. You just might need to make an extra effort. Okay. So if you're, trying to avoid it is one thing. If you have type 2 diabetes, like you said, watch your blood sugars, know your numbers. Most people know what their cholesterol is and their blood pressure. And I would argue that really your blood sugar is at least as important, okay, as those. And the fantastic thing is that if you eat an anti-diabetes diet and lead an anti-diabetes lifestyle, you will have a better cholesterol, you will have a better blood sugar, blood pressure. So everything will benefit. Don't focus on weight loss. The truth is that the real weight that matters is the weight that's internal. If you are somebody that carries weight around your tummy, then, to understand that fat around your tummy is a toxic fat. It does secrete toxins. It is active. So, you want to get that down as fast as you can, but it's, that is inside around your internal organs. So you're really trying to get rid of that. So don't be paranoid about weight, but at the same time, by eating lots and lots of vegetables, by cutting out the white flour and the sugar and, having that period of not eating in the evening time, doing your exercise, that is a fantastic way to start. And I promise you really will notice benefits very quickly on your waistline as well as everything else.
And you're doing everything right to protect your brain, which is the key thing. And
Absolutely.
Your immune health, it's kind of, it's a no-brainer. As I keep saying, I have to stop saying that this week.
But it's true.
Siobhan, thanks a million. And
pleasure, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
It was great to talk to you, and I'll talk to you again soon.
For sure. And actually, what I will do is I can give you a little booklet.
Brilliant.
If any of your,
we can share to the
share
newsletter. Yeah, fantastic. I'll be doing all of that at the weekend because there's some other kind of cheat sheets from other speakers as well.
Brilliant. You can put them all together.
Super. Okay.
Lovely to talk to you. Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.